on in. Welcome to Homekeepers. Grab yourself a cup of tea and just stay with us for a few minutes. You won't be sorry. It's going to be a very, very interesting program. But before I get into that, I do want you to feel welcome. Come right on in. Perhaps this is the first time you've even noticed this program. Just stay with us. Hope it won't be your last. And I always like to acknowledge those viewers who've been with us a long time. We certainly appreciate you. And there's one just constant comment we get about the show, and that is the very interesting guests that come our way, and I can't take any credit for it. I have to say that the Lord sends them. And with such a variety of subjects and things that can help you and edify you and direct you and teach you. And so it's my privilege to be able to introduce to you guests on such a variety of subjects that can make your life better. You know, we talk about money, we talk about health, we talk about parenting, we talk about marriage, we talk about sicknesses, we talk about natural ways to be healthier. We don't run out of subjects here, but we've never touched this one that we have today. My guest is Joy Paz, and the book is The Agony and the Ecstasy of the Bipolar Mind. And when I saw that, I thought, what in the world is that about? And I delved into it, and it just kept me riveted, page after page. Joy is a former missionary. She spent a lot of years in missions. But both she and her husband suffered from this bipolar, I guess you would call it a disease. It's a book that you'll never, ever read anything quite like it. And it offers the latest in medications and so forth, psychiatry that can approach this disease, but on top of it all is what the Lord can do. And it's misunderstood because a lot of people think that if you're depressed, you're not really a Christian. And she covers every bit of this. I'm anxious for you to meet her and to hear her story. And I'm going to join Susan in a minute. Forget this. Buttermilk, cheddar, bacon, bread. Now, Stephanie and I didn't go to cooking school, and we haven't written any books, but we do try to seek out odd recipes, different, weird maybe. And this turned into the most beautiful loaf. We haven't tasted it yet, so we're going to prepare it in front of you, and you can decide whether or not you would like to have the recipe. I am offering, again, the Total Money Makeover. We have offered this for a number of years, really, and just recently I thought I'm going to get that out again because Stephanie's talked a lot about it. So if you want this book, it can change your life if you follow what is in it. For that gift of at least $25, we will get it to you by Dave Ramsey. I love it when I can listen to Dave Ramsey on the radio. He's just the best. And the Lord has raised him up to help a country that the young people, and not even just the young people, the old people are dead up to their ears. And he points them to the biblical way of handling money. So, if you use a credit card, 1-800-229-0059 or Homekeepers, Box 6922, Clearwater, Florida, 33758. We'll get it out to you. You know what, Stephanie?
You said you were going to meet over here with Susan, so
yeah. And we got the she put on the chart the Total Susan Makeover.
Yes, it is the Total Stephanie Makeover.
But he would say you shouldn't have any credit cards. Mm-hmm. I have credit cards, but I pay off every penny every month, and they give me a kickback of 1 to 2%.
Yes, higher rewards.
But I think he does that because most people
they get out. Then if they still have credit cards, they get back in.
Mm-hmm.
That's
yeah.
So that's
anyway,
why he says that. Okay, so are you ready for this?
Okay, one more thing though.
Yes.
As we make this program, it's the end of August. And you say you have all your Christmas shopping done in October.
Oh yeah, by October. I've started already for
have
sure.
You?
Oh yeah.
And you wrap it?
I'll wrap it in October.
Okay,
I'll be done before probably November, hopefully November 1st, because then I can enjoy my holidays.
Oh, I'm going to try to do that this year.
Okay.
You have inspired me.
Great.
I do have some things bought, so I'm going to make a list, check it twice.
I've gotten a few messages on my Facebook fan book page,
Oh,
of
yeah.
people who are already starting to shop, and they said it's really taking the stress away from it. They're really thinking about what they're taking.
So y'all
one
are talking
person-
about Christmas?
Oh, yeah.
Now, she has a Facebook page, so
Yes.
how many you got?
256.
All right, we need to get that up to 300 immediately.
Yes.
All right, have you ever heard of putting bacon in bread or buttermilk?
I think you should put bacon in everything.
Okay.
So you're going to spray the pan, and then you have buttermilk, butter, and an egg that you're going to whisk together. And I have flour, sugar, baking powder, and baking soda. that
Very
I'm
little
gonna
sugar,
mix together.
by the way.
Yeah, just a quarter of a cup.
So this is melted butter. I think
Yep.
it's a quarter of a cup, isn't it?
Yep.
And a cup buttermilk.
Yep.
Buttermilk looks so thick.
Okay. Now, if you don't have butter, I'm going to just glance right over this like this never
talk
happened.
a little bit. All right.
If you don't have
Sorry about that.
buttermilk at home
Yeah.
and you need just a little bit like this, all you have to do is take regular milk and put
This is a mess.
a tablespoon.
Keep talking to the folks. I
Put
get some.
a tablespoon of vinegar in it. It will turn into
You know, I
buttermilk.
heard that. It
Yes,
will-
it works. I've done it.
So if you only need a little bit, don't go buy
So from
buttermilk.
now on, you get to just stand there and look pretty. I tried to give you
Okay,
a
I'm
job.
fired. I am fired.
I was trying to be helpful and give you a job, and
Yeah,
look.
yeah,
Ay. Okay.
All right.
So we're gonna mix. I got the dry ingredients mixed up. Right?
Okay.
You
Can I
wanna
have
do
this?
it?
All right. And this goes in that plus.
Plus, we're gonna put bacon, and we're gonna put cheese, and we're gonna put some scallions, chives. Are you done?
Yes.
Are you
I think
over
I just
it?
got fired.
Yeah. Just stand there and look pretty, sister.
All right. Well, look at this.
Look how beautiful that is. So beautiful.
That's the prettiest loaf of bread we've ever made.
Yes, for sure. So I'm gonna get this mixed up, and then I'm just gonna put in the cheese.
I want to meet the person who came up with this idea.
Yes.
They must
We
have,
want to meet everyone when
well,
we
they must have been
cook.
dreaming something. I'm going to take the second slice. Ooh, it has a beautiful texture.
Oh my gosh, this smells
What would you put on this?
I just put a little butter. That's it. I mean, this would be a great addition to like any meal. Instead of having
It would
biscuits.
be a surprise, wouldn't it?
Instead of having biscuits or rolls.
Oh, it's good.
I have no doubt.
It is good. If you thought up this recipe, contact me. Wouldn't that be a surprise to your guests? Pass the bread
That
around.
is delicious.
Boy, that's good.
That's a good one.
So it's called buttermilk, cheddar, bacon bread.
Yes.
And
So you just put this in a loaf pan, you bake it 350 for about 55 minutes.
I'm telling you, it tastes good.
It is delicious. It really is.
Because if it doesn't taste good, we tell you it doesn't.
We're totally honest. My mother gets she laughs about it. She's like, I can tell you did not like that.
Camera doesn't lie, does it?
No.
All right. If you want this recipe, information is coming up on your screen, but just email us. You can call it the bacon bread. We'll know what it is. And if you don't have a computer, write to me. That address is coming up on your screen. There's no cost. We'll be glad to get it out to you. You'll surprise people when you serve this. Stay with me. I want you to meet Joy.
If you would like a copy of today's recipe, just write to the address on your screen, or you can email your request to arthelene@rippy.org.
All right, I am glad to introduce to you Joy Paz, who has written The Agony and the Ecstasy of the Bipolar Mind. And I want to welcome you, and I guess as another Christian, thank you for all the good missionary work you've done through the years.
It's been a joy.
What an interesting life you've had. You say that both you and your husband are bipolar, and he went to be with the Lord just not too long ago.
April. Mm-hmm.
Which was, what, 3 or 4 months ago?
Yeah.
Did you know when you married that each of you?
No, but my father had a nervous breakdown, and my mother told me about it. I didn't know it was bipolar at the time. And then in his family, bipolar is quite, there's a lot in his family. But I didn't know it. We didn't know at the time. It's rare, I think, for a husband and wife both to have bipolar.
It made an interesting book, I'll tell you. How would you define it?
Bipolar is what it says, bipolar, 2 poles, way manic, way depressive. And I mean, everybody has times when they're depressed, but this is deep depression. I am manic, but however, for 3 months I suffered severe depression, and it just left one day. I didn't have to take any medicine or anything. My husband was on a hypomania, and that's high with a lot of energy and a lot of drive and passion. And he was on there for 46 years on a hypomania, and then he crashed. And so he was mainly depressive.
Now, the manic part is the very high.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you had more of that, and your husband had more of the depression.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think any of these things are kind of taking on a life of their own, and you look at somebody, they ask them, oh, they must be bipolar, they're this or this or this. What you're talking about is a concrete diagnosis, right?
It's a disorder. I used to think it was a disease, but it's a disorder. And it's just like, for years, I suspected Robin Williams was manic depressive or bipolar. And it came out, you know, he even said, there's a quote, it said that he was manic. But the world didn't really know he had suffered from depression too, until we found out. And so he had the mania, like I have a lot of drive, a lot of passion, and passion has been described as a heart ablaze with vision, and an inspiring vision ignites passion. So passion, energy, drive, and that's how you can pretty well tell a mania, manic.
Is there a layman's version of what really goes on in the brain? I understand a little bit of Parkinson's. I understand a little bit that was in our family. And they said they call it kind of a bridge out. I can kind of understand that and all. And I don't know about ADD. Is that related at all?
No, bipolar is well, hereditary. You know, I have several relatives.
Would they call that a split personality?
No, that's like schizophrenia, and bipolar is not schizophrenic. It's a chemical imbalance in the brain. That is a hereditary gene, and it can skip several generations. I did a family, on the family tree, I saw many people were, my relatives were depressed, and two suicide attempts, and then 1 suicide. So it's in my family, and it runs in my husband's family.
Because true depression is not just feeling low or a bad mood or something. There's something going on in the brain that triggers it. Both you and your husband had it. As I read the book, you tended more to the high or the manic, and I tried to imagine what it was like to live like that.
Well, of course, I did understand his depression since I had 3 months of deep depression. I understood that. But he took 24 different medicines, and he had 22 electric shock treatments. He had a $30,000 implant put in that stimulates the vagus nerve, but none of that helped.
This was all because of a deep, deep, deep depression, and the doctor, psychiatrist tried what they knew. I don't think they know all that much yet, do they?
Well, I had just recently heard that 2 anesthesiologists accidentally found a cure for depression, and with no side effects. However, the FDA has to approve it, which could take 3, 4 more years. So, I mean, apparently they discovered one, but you know, you have to wait until the FDA approves of it.
How did he function on the evangelistic, or on the mission field? You were in Brazil, Belarus?
He went to Belarus 9 times. That's when he was on his mania. That's when he had all this
The high.
drive. Yeah. And actually, his bipolar was triggered by his subconscious mind, where when he was 10 years old, a preacher said, "You're going to hell." And all he knew is that he would burn forever and ever. And so ever since he was 10 years old, he did everything he could to prove to God that he shouldn't go to hell. He did mission work on 3 continents. He just a director of children's homes, everything he could do. And that's what drove him with all that. And then he crashed.
Well, being on the mission field like that, you're a whole different culture and all that. Does that play into it at all?
No, he was fine on the mission field. He was capable of doing anything. He taught in Portuguese, the institute. These men would go to an institute to learn how to be leaders in the church, and he would teach them in Portuguese, and he accomplished so much.
Did you ever wonder why Jesus didn't just heal him? I mean, you're people of faith.
Okay, he was in a spiritual warfare. Now, not a lot of people don't realize. He was in a spiritual warfare. He told me, he said, "The devil's after me." Because, see, he did so much, and he could have accomplished so much more for the Lord if he would have been healthy. But, and one time I looked into his eyes, and I saw blackness. I saw evil. I just saw evil. He would spend hours in the Bible because he knew that he was in a warfare.
But there was something in that brain that wasn't working right.
Right. It could have been medicine. It could have been that,
Yes.
it could have been anything. Only the Lord knows. And it could have been all that medicine, which I know he took some that he shouldn't have, it was detrimental to his brain.
And we need to put a time frame on this, because 30 years ago or more, who knew anything about manic depression or bipolar, whatever you call it? And so these medications come down the pike, and then decades later, they find out, oh, those can give you thoughts of suicide and things like that.
Yeah.
People need to understand how medical science, where they keep trying things, but it doesn't mean they'll work.
Doctors even say they have to keep trying different medicines because they don't know how you would, everybody's different. They react different. So the doctors say, oh, this one's not working on him, try another one.
At what point was there an actual diagnosis?
It was 1981 when I was diagnosed with bipolar. And at that time, I read everything I could. I read, like, Patty Duke, the actress. I read her 2 books. I read all these books.
Did you figure it out ahead of time?
Well, see, I knew that my father had a breakdown. And so my mother always said, "You're just like your father." So he was a sophomore in college.
They give you that.
Yeah. So I mean, I was just like my father. I should have a nervous breakdown too. So I wasn't surprised. And the stress was so much in Brazil as a young mother and wife, and having to teach the women. I had to translate all the Portuguese and English into Portuguese, and so the stress got so much that triggered my bipolar.
Yeah, and I do think that in the work of the Lord, forgetting any chemical imbalance, you can get off balance because you're working for the Lord.
Yeah.
And forget that He put in the Bible, God Himself, rest, Sabbath,
yes, right,
rest. I know I was raised in a system that you kind of work for the Lord all the time. You were doing something, and how we rob ourselves of the presence of the Lord. And so I understand that that part of it. I have personally seen, and I've known someone pretty close, that you see the high, just the high that didn't make sense, really, and then plunge into a depression that could take you to suicide. Sometimes when people are doing kind of oddball things, it's when they're in that high, that manic part. And I understand that you wore a ball gown one time to get a pedicure.
Yes.
Did anybody say there's something wrong with this picture?
I wasn't going to write about my personal psychosis because that just opens up. But I decided I wanted to because I wanted people to understand the mind of a manic. That when you go out of reality, I wanted people to understand. For one thing, I almost killed myself and didn't mean to. I was walking, and I was going to go in a catatonic state, and I was going to walk over the cliff. But I saw this sign and went like that, so I went. Had I gone off the cliff, I would have killed myself, and people would have said that she committed suicide. But I didn't. And so I think a lot of times manics commit suicide, but not meaning to.
Well, when you're in that state, do you know it? I guess you don't.
Yes, well, you know everything going on. You're aware.
But you don't know you're acting strange?
No, you're just in your own world. And you just, catatonic state is you're just, staring and just in another world, really.
Yeah, I just wonder, in some of these instances, they can be so misunderstood. So misunderstood, and your book kind of puts a spotlight on it. Mainly, it tells you what the Lord can do. And you use a song in here a lot that I, as a teenager, I think my sister and I introduced it to, maybe in Colorado, It Is No Secret What God Can Do. Stuart Hamblin wrote it. And the name of her book is The Agony and the Ecstasy of the Bipolar Mind. Let's put the website up. I believe we have a website for you. And that's the way you can get the book. And it covers what doctors do and try, and medications. It also covers very much what the Lord does. I find it a very educational book.
I did a lot of research, a lot.
Yeah. So when was your last missionary endeavor?
Well, we came back in 1980 from Brazil, and then we went back for Vacation Bible School in 2002, and I went in 2005. So that's the last time that I went. But I have worked in World Bible School, and so that's a mission work too.
Now, how many years, your husband's last years, was a very, very, very deep depression?
11 years.
11. What's it like to live with that?
I'm a very positive person. My husband was a super negative, everything negative, and he never had been until he had that breakdown. He was always a positive, and he turned it so negative. I tried everything I knew to try to help him, and it just didn't work. So it was very difficult. I read the Bible. I mean, I soaked up the Psalms. The Psalms really, with David, his crying out and everything, I could identify with that. So, and then I got CDs that were very peaceful and relaxed because it was very difficult. So
you were proactive in you trying to stay stable in a very, very difficult situation.
Yes.
It's awfully hard to see a loved one. Like, for how many years?
It's 11 years he was very, very ill.
Do you think at that point all the medications and all had damaged the brain?
There's a possibility that, that is one thing that it could have affected him because he was so opposite. Those 11 years he was so opposite. So some of those medicines could have.
Well, the brain is an organ. It can just get sick. I thought we had a website. We don't.
My website's down, but Amazon.com says.
Amazon.com. Her website's not working right now. And I'll give you the name of the book again, The Agony and Ecstasy of the Bipolar Mind. One reason I'm a little bit hesitant with these things, because when you talk about it, they'll see something, oh, well, they're bipolar, or they're this, and that's not what this is about.
No.
This is very, very serious. And it's wonderful to know that your husband, depressed for years, is with the Lord today.
If anybody's going to appreciate heaven, he will. A lot of bipolar people go into show business and into politics. Recently, like a year and a half ago, Jesse Jackson Jr. was disappeared, and it came out later that he was suffering from bipolar disorder. Well, it didn't just affect his family; it affected thousands of people that weren't being represented because he was a representative. So bipolar can affect a lot of people, not just the family.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great. For 30 years, I took lithium.
Now that's a natural compound.
It is a natural salt.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I only
compound.
have one kidney, and it was affecting my thyroid, so I had to get off it. So I'm on Lamictal. Lithium inhibited all my inspiration, my imagination, my creativity, suppressed it. And so when I got on Lamictal, all this came, and I couldn't finish. For years, I couldn't do anything in my book because I didn't have that inspiration. then when I got on Lamictal, I could finish my book, and so I'm doing really well.
In your book, you say that there's, in the bipolar brain, there's an area there that's tapped into that most of the time it's never ever tapped into in what you just call a regular or normal person.
Okay, now people try to get into that by taking psychedelic drugs or anything to get into that. I reached it naturally. It was a real high, and all of my senses were electrified. And I had the ultimate in sexual pleasure, everything. This is where a lot of people become real promiscuous. Now, I'm not going to say his name, but there was a golfer, and he had hundreds of one-night stands, you know. And this is what happens to a lot of bipolar patients. They don't want to take their medicine because they won't have that tremendous high, that, you know. And so it's incredible. All my senses, as well as my intuition and all, were really just really sharp. It was just, you know, incredible.
And then you come down from that?
Yeah, I have to take medicine to not get in those highs, where a lot of people take psychedelic drugs to get that high. It's very dangerous.
Well, it's such an interesting subject, and when you talk about the Psalms, so many times I've had this love-hate relationship kind of with King David because he wasn't a very good dad.
Yeah, right,
yeah,
right.
There were things there, but thank you, David. You expressed what I was not able to express, not smart enough to express, that you, and this is what, just that word of God that just keeps getting through the most trying, unusual, difficult times. That's one thing that I found in your book. It just kept me interested to know that there's a lot of things we can't understand in this life, friends. We'll never understand them till we go to heaven, and maybe it won't matter then. However, that he can see you through anything if you'll believe and trust like she did, with everything dark, with her husband in the deepest depression, and he, a believer, somebody who believed in God and trusted him in the lowest of depression, that God has welcomed him into his kingdom now, and that is gone. And so it's so important to understand that no matter what you're going through, the Lord will be with you. And you might not feel him, you might not sense it, and he will be there because his word said he would be there. And that's what has sustained my sister. Interesting subject. I'm sorry we're out of time, but please join me next time, remembering there's no higher calling than that of a homekeeper. God bless you.
If you should miss a Homekeepers program, you can catch up by going to www.ctnonline.com. Click on CTN Programs and then on Homekeepers.